Hello, and welcome to American Heron Wargaming. This is a battle report for Fallout Wasteland Warfare by Modiphius. This is a special battle report because it covers my 5th game in the Battle for Nuka World campaign that I'm part of at my local game shop. We're now in turn 3 of the campaign, where the forces have escalated to 750 points per side. So for the first battles of round 3, the Pack and the Disciples are battling over One-Eyed Ike's Blacksmith, the Operators and Pack are tussling over King Cola's Castle, and I'm trying to wrest control of Vault Tech Among the Stars from the Disciples in the name of the Operators. Today's scenario is called Ghoul Problem, and it's from the Forge in the Fire expansion. Unlike most Fallout scenarios, this one actually requires no interaction between the opposing sides. Feral Ghouls spawn on the board, and the winner of the scenario is whichever force can kill more ghouls in 6 turns. The lettered terrain pieces are the potential spawn points. 2 on my side, 2 on my opponent's side, and then 1 big one in the middle. Since this is the Nuka World campaign, I'm fielding my Institute forces. They're led by the unique synth A2018, the heavy weapon specialist carrying a Tesla cannon and a power fist, with an Institute laser pistol as backup. Then I've got 3 troopers, each with Institute laser rifles and rippers. 6 Gen 1 synths with Institute laser pistols and batons fill out the core, and 1 engineer with a baton and the staggering Institute laser pistol closed it out. Since my gang controls a node in the Galactic Zone, I got to add a Mr. Frothy server to my force for free. My opponent had a force of gunners, heavily supported with robots. Lieutenant Clint was in his standard kit with a laser rifle and T-51 armor. There was a gunner commander with a plasma rifle and T-45 armor. 2 privates with laser rifles were the only remaining human models on the team. 2 battered Assaultrons and 3 battered Protectrons were joined by the freebie Mr. Frothy server to round out the complete force. The deployment zones were on opposite sides of each other, but with the full 750 caps in each force, they were basically filled out. Besides my higher model count, my opponent's commander can discount models in their control area for the purposes of determining advantage. So they had the advantage to start, and for most of the game. The battered Assaultron started things off, charging directly into one of the ghouls. On my side, A2018 kicked off by detonating a ghoul with its Tesla cannon. A round of shooting into combat put 3 damage onto the Feral Ghoul, but then accidentally landed 2 on the battered Assaultron. One of my troopers double-tapped the other ghoul that we could see, but only managed a total of 3 damage. Those Institute laser rifles with 1 base damage don't always hit very hard. The gunner private showed off the superiority of the standard laser rifle and shot down the unengaged Feral Ghoul. My next trooper figured that it could move up and take a single shot to finish off the ghoul, but missed. The other battered Assaultron went looking for goodies and ended up finding a suit of T-60 power armor. There was a clockwork trap in the way, but the damage was blocked by armor. The next trooper also tried to move and shoot, but also missed, really showing off the Institute elite here. Not that the Gen 1s fared any better. Another Gen 1 attempted to take down the ghoul, but failed after 2 shots. On the gunner side, firing into that combat paid off, with one of the battered Protectrons finishing off the wounded ghoul. Finally, one of the fusillade of Institute laser shots connected and took down the ghoul on my side of the board. After that, it was time for some repositioning. One Gen 1 found nothing. The other found a lockpick test, which it couldn't perform, both because it doesn't have the skill, but also because it was out of actions. Another one found a set of binoculars, which wasn't very useful as there aren't any investigation markers on the board. Mr. Frothy uncovered a missile launcher, though. Not that he has any idea how to use it. This closed out turn 1. Both sides lanced 2 ghouls, and we were pushing up to get coverage of the board to be ready for the next batch of arrivals. The event for turn 2 was Rugged Rubble. Someone on my side was going to get a danger card. It was a dead, bloated, glowing one. It was my engineer, which makes sense. They would definitely go poking around a corpse for some loot. The rad damage isn't a concern due to their environment suit, and they pull out a gold-plated flip lighter. Fancy, but not really useful in this context. The spawn point for the next batch of Feral Ghouls is on my opponent's side of the board. They place their 2 on the side closest to their models, and I place my 2 on the opposite side, hoping to get around and try to snag them before they can get swept away. The first battered Protectron was up and blasted 2 damage onto one of the freshly spawned ghouls. A2018 tried a long bomb shot with the Tesla cannon, but it went wide. One of the gunners got a damage onto the one that A2018 just missed, but my trooper wasn't able to seal the deal. Then the gunner commander finished it off. Unburdened with dealing with ghouls, the battered Assaultron started pushing up towards my forces. Then the gunner backline finished off the other ghoul in line of sight. If the activation order seems like it's a bit odd, that's mainly because I didn't photograph every single activation, just most of them. One of my Gen 1s moved up to be just in range of one of the hidden ghouls with its Institute laser pistol, and managed to singe a single point of damage in it. On the other side of the board, my Mr. Frothy server took 2 damage from a battered Assaultron shot. Meeting the challenge of the Assaultron, I charged one of my troopers in, and followed it up with another charge from a Gen 1 synth. We were getting ready for some serious bot-on-synth violence. The other battered Assaultron could not wait and head lasered one of my Gen 1s. Fortunately, it only did 3 damage. It was then countercharged by another Gen 1, who was joined by Mr. Frothy, and the still smoldering Gen 1 that ate the head laser shot, which was the end of the activations for our models. but since there were still some ghouls on the board, they actually got a chance to activate. One of them charged the private who had snagged the T-60 armor that the battered Assaultron had found, and managed to pull out some important cabling for 2 damage. The other one failed to charge in, and just joined the fray, which wrapped up turn 2 in earnest. The event for turn 3 was vertibirds overhead. They're not from the Institute, but perhaps the gunners are preparing reinforcements. This time the ghouls spawned on my side of the board, but only 3. The mechanical violence started right away, with the battered Assaultron taking down one of the Gen 1s before swinging around to Mr. Frothy. The other battered Assaultron took a beating of its own, though, suffering 4 damage from the Trooper's Ripper. I activated A2018 next and broke down the closest ghoul into its component atoms. I didn't want to risk the gunners sneaking it out from under me. A2018 actually got off their quick reload ability and got to fire again with the Tesla cannon. This time we sent it downtown, hitting the 2 ghouls in melee with the power-armored private, though that might have just made it easier for them to score, since the private went next and nailed one with just the improvised melee weapon attack. One of the troopers tried to shoot down the other ghoul, but the shot went wide. The remaining trooper moved up to draw a line on the freshly spawned ghoul, but ended up getting a crit fail with an action point and used that to prepare. Clint fired into the battered Assaultron's combat, taking out my Mr. Frothy. The remaining Gen 1 swatted away with its baton, getting 2 more damaged into the battered Assaultron. My engineer tried their hand at shooting into melee, but only ended up tagging the Gen 1. Back on the other side of the board, one of the Gen 1s caught a ghoul with a charge. The battered Protectron tried to support its Assaultron compatriot, but ended up hitting the combat bot in the back. Finally, the other ghoul on the gunner's side of the field was taken down with a beeline shot from the laser rifle-toting private. Another Gen 1 tried to double-team the ghoul, but a crit fail didn't get the job done. The gunner's Mr. Frothy server charged into the Gen 1 synth and left it with only a single HP left. Which was the end of our activations. Onto the ghouls. Fighting fiercely after getting surrounded, the soldier ghoul tore down one of the Gen 1s menacing it, only to be joined by a friend of its own surrounding the Gen 1 that was going for an easy kill. That was the final action of round 3. Halfway through. The event for turn 4 was a hidden observer. Perhaps this was from the Institute side? Either way, it was simply flavor, no in-game effect. Then 2 more ghouls spawned in from the centerpiece of terrain. The very battered Assaultron was up first, KOing a Gen 1 and putting 2 damage on the trooper while it had the opportunity. Another trooper took a shot at the newly spawned ghoul, but missed, and thus charged in to make sure that it would go down with my next activation. Which, fortunately, it did. On the other side, the private's pair of laser rifle shots netted only a single damage on the ghoul that had just emerged in front of them. The double-teamed Gen 1 swatted down one ghoul with 2 thwacks. Then caught a Tesla cannon shot in the back from A2018 and crumpled. At least the follow-up pistol shot hit the correct target. Mr. Frothy closed out the Gen 1 that was bothering it and zipped away. Another Gen 1 tried to avenge its fallen brethren, but couldn't land the shot. Then the battered Assaultron charged into the squishy human engineer who had tried to relocate to keep the troopers in fighting shape. This was just an overhead shot to show all the chaos. The battered Protectron tried to succeed where the private had failed, but did not. With 2 swipes from the Ripper, the trooper finally downed the battered Assaultron and ripped out the self-destruct module before it could activate. A battered Protectron moved up and zapped a single point of damage into one of the remaining Gen 1s. The only remaining ghoul, having survived some fire from the gunner private and commander, pushed up towards A2018, but failed its charge and thus could only move closer. Which brought turn 4 to a close. Bolts and armor panels and ghoul bits were flying in every direction. At this point, I was down on points, 6-4, but not so far down that I was out of the fight yet. The event for turn 5 was a dust cloud. We'd missed the icon that should have warned us about its coming, but no attacks were happening at long range. Only 1 ghoul was spawning this turn, from the center terrain piece. Since I'd lost enough models, I finally had the advantage, so I put it right in the middle of my most elite ghoul smashers. A2018 kicked things off with a Tesla cannon blast, killing off one of the ghouls. Then it landed the quick reload ability and spun around to try on the other one. Unfortunately, it was a miss, and the scatter brought the Tesla explosion back onto A2018 and 2 of the troopers. Both troopers took damage, but A2018 managed to block it. Woof. Fortunately, though, a solid charge and swing from the trooper who didn't get Tesla'd in the back tied the game by closing out the freshly spawned ghoul. This, however, meant that there were no more ghouls to try and claim, so we just have each other to bash on until next turn. And bash we did. The battered Assaultron put a hurting on the engineer and escaped unscathed from the trooper's attempt at a counterattack. The gunner commander pushed up and got 2 more damage onto one of the troopers. However, the next trooper was able to finish off the other battered Assaultron. The engineer activated next and gratefully healed 2 points of damage off the trooper which just finished off the Assaultron. Which wrapped up turn 5. The result of the next spawn location and number was going to swing the game one way or the other, as both my opponent and I were tied with 7 ghoul kills. The event for turn 6 was boom. It was appropriate for the moment, even without an in-game effect. The spawn point was on my side of the board, which was fortunate for me. However, my opponent had the advantage again, and thus was able to place 2 of the ghouls in positions that would make it very difficult, if not impossible, for me to hit them, but they had ample forces with firing lines on them. Whomever could claim 2 ghouls would lock it up. The gunner's first activation was Clint, who put 1 damage down onto the most accessible ghoul. That left an opening for my trooper to snipe it down a bit more easily. So 1 down, 1 to go for me. Next up was a Protectron who tried to zap the ghoul far in the back, but missed. Then 82018 had a beautiful shot, but only managed to get 2 damage through. A low roll on the Tesla cannon, no quick reload, and then the backup shot from the Institute laser pistol got blocked by armor, which gave the gunner commander in the back the opportunity to step up and finish that one off. So we were tied again. At this point, I had very few models capable of even getting a line of sight on the final ghoul. One of the troopers stepped up and was miraculously able to get 2 damage onto it, but that was just setting up my opponent for an easier kill. Fortunately for me, the gunner private whiffed on both their shots. I had another chance. Though far from my best shooter, the engineer was fast enough to get a clear line of sight. They drew up their staggering Institute laser pistol and missed. My opponent was also running low on decent combat units though. They had 1 battered Protectron left and a choice to make. Take 2 long-range shots with cover and worse odds, or move up to get to short range where the chance was better, but not great. They decided to put the metal to the pedal to the other metal and move the Protectron into a better position. It raised its hand blaster and iced the final ghoul. So that was the end of the game. It was a win for the gunners, 9-8, but a good solid game all around. I liked this scenario, though I did feel like the randomness of the spawns made it too likely for things to become unbalanced. In our run, there were 3 spawns in the middle, counting the initial one, 2 on my side and only 1 on my opponent's. If, for example, 3 drops had been on my side instead of just 2, I would have had a pretty significant advantage over my opponent. We were talking about it afterwards, and the rules didn't specifically say if the selection was supposed to be fully random every time, or if each option was only supposed to be chosen once. If I was going to play it again, I'd suggest making each point spawn only once. There are 5, so 1 per turn after the first. At least that way you can start weighing your chances, although the tension of not knowing did mean that we had to be on our toes. In any case, that's it for now. Stay safe out there in the Wasteland.